Hello, everyone. Do you want to know what is happening inside me when I power on? Do you want to know how I am booting myself and load the configuration files? Then watch this video and learn it.
Hello, welcome back. In this chapter, we are going to talk about the booting process and configuration management in Cisco devices. Welcome to CCNA 200-301, Implementing and Administering Cisco Solutions, Chapter number 40, Booting Process, Startup Config and Running Config. In this chapter, we are going to talk about the booting process in Cisco router or switch. We are going to talk about the different components in a Cisco device such as flash, RAM and NVRAM. Then we are going to talk about the startup configuration. Then we will talk about the running configuration. Then I will show you how to show startup and running configuration of your Cisco device. Then finally, I will show you how to save the configuration of Cisco device. Now let's discuss what is the booting process. Do you know what is actually happening when your Cisco device is powered on? Probably you don't. To explain this process, let me connect my Cisco router into a wall socket and provide the electricity to my Cisco router. What is going to actually happen to my router when it is powered on? First of all, your router is going through a process called POST, and the POST stands for Power On Self Test. What does it mean? It means that when the device power on, it is going through a self-checking. In this process, it will make sure that it has a storage device in it, its memory is working fine, its processor is working fine, its motherboard is working fine, and its all interfaces are available as per the installed module, etc. Basically, it is a self-starting of all the components installed in that router. If there is any problem for any installed component, then the device will report a hardware error or hardware failure. Now, what happens after the power on self test? After the power on self test, router will go to the configuration register to find the OS. And what is the function of this configuration register? The function of configuration register is to determine the Cisco IOS location. The router wants to load its operating system. For that, it needs to understand where this Cisco IOS. IOS is the operating system that Cisco devices are using. It needs to find out where is its Cisco IOS located. If the router found the Cisco IOS file using the configuration register, then next step is loading the IOS, the operating system of the router. But in case if the configuration register didn't find the iOS, then what is the next step? Then the router will look for its operating system in its flash memory. The flash is the component that working as a storage for the Cisco router. And if the router found the Cisco iOS in the flash memory, then it load that iOS. What if the router cannot find the operating system in flash memory? Then it look for a TFTP server for the operating system. The routers can configure in a way to load the Cisco IOS from a TFTP server through the network. So if this router found the Cisco operating system in that TFTP server, then it's load that operating system. So what if the router didn't find the operating system in that TFTP server? Then the router will look for its ROM-on configuration. The ROM-on contain a mini operating system with a limited feature. It is used to start the Cisco device in maintenance mode for troubleshooting and diagnostic purpose. So when the router is looking to the ROM-on area, it found the operating system, the mini version of the operating system, and it load that operating system. Now, what will happen to a router when it's load the operating system? So when the operating system load, router will look into its NVRAM to find the configuration file. This NVRAM stands for non-volatile random access memory. This is where the Cisco device configuration file stored. So after loading the operating system, this router will look into the NVRAM for the configuration file. If it found the configuration file, then it's load that configuration as a startup configuration. What if the NVRAM didn't contain any configuration file? So in that case, router will go to the setup mode for the initial configuration. So when the router is going to a setup mode, that means there is no configuration present at NVRAM, and router is looking to set up that device as a fresh configuration. So this is what happening when your router is powered on. This is the booting process of the Cisco devices. Now let's take your computer as an example. What happens when your computer switch on? So when your computer switch on, first of all it is going through the post process, and post stands for power on self test. The computer will check all the component which is installed inside it. The processor, the memory, the hard drive, motherboard, graphics card, etc. And it will make sure all the devices are working fine. There is no hardware failure. And after the post process, what is next? After the post process, computer will look for its operating system, because it's need to load its operating system. And where it is looking for the operating system? Of course at the storage, and hard drive is the storage that we used in the computer. So the computer look for its operating system in the hard drive. And when the computer find the operating system in the hard drive, then it's load that operating system. It may be a Windows operating system, a Linux operating system, or a Mac operating system, or any other operating system. So this is what happening when your computer is powered on, and this process is called the booting process. This is the booting process of a computer. Now what will happen when your router power on? There is lot of similarities between the computer and router booting process. So when your router power on, first of all it is going through the post process, power on self test. Then it will make sure all the installed components, processor, motherboard, interfaces are working fine. There is no hardware failure. Then after the post process, the router will look for its Cisco operating system, which is called iOS. iOS stands for interconnecting operating system. Same like Windows in computer or Linux in computer, the Cisco devices are using Cisco iOS as an operating system. So where is this Cisco iOS file located? In the computer we know it is located at the storage area, which is the hard drive. So in the Cisco router, where is the Cisco iOS located? It is what called flash storage. Same like hard drive in a computer, the Cisco routers has a storage place which is called the flash. And router will look for the Cisco iOS inside the flash. And when it found the Cisco iOS in flash, then it decompressed that Cisco iOS. Why do we want to decompress the Cisco iOS? Because Cisco iOS stored in flash as a compressed image. And when the router boot up, it need to decompress. It need to expand to its original size. So the Cisco router decompress that Cisco iOS from the flash and load it into the random access memory of the Cisco device. This random access memory is the RAM, the memory of the Cisco router. Then after, once the Cisco iOS is loaded, then it will look for the configuration file in its NVRAM. Here the NVRAM is the non-volatile random access memory. Now the Cisco router found the configuration file in NVRAM. Then it load that configuration into Cisco iOS and start it as a startup configuration. So whatever the configuration available in NVRAM, Cisco consider it as a startup configuration file and load the configuration file into Cisco iOS. And when the Cisco iOS load the configuration file, then the user can get the CLI access to the device. It can be in the form of a console or it can be in the form of remote. And using the CLI, the command line interface, user can interact with the Cisco device and do the configuration. It can be setting up a new configuration or modify the existing configuration. So this is the similarities between booting process in a computer and a Cisco router. Now let's talk about the configuration files. What is the configuration file in a Cisco device? The configuration file are some kind of file that contain the configuration information of the Cisco device. It is basically the files that tell to the Cisco iOS how the device is configured. So when the Cisco device load the operating system, it takes the configuration file as it is and tell to the iOS these are the configuration file. So you need to load it accordingly. Now when we consider a Cisco device, for example a router, what are the main components available in a Cisco router? As like every electronic device, it has the motherboard, processor, etc. But we are not going to talk about those main parameters. So when you consider the Cisco router, there is a component called flash. Flash is working as a storage area of the Cisco device. It has exactly the same function of the hard drive in a computer. And this flash contains Cisco operating system inside it in a compressed format. And why it is in the compress format? When we compress the operating system, it's need very less space to occupy. So when we compress something and store, then we need very less space compared to its original size. Now the another part in Cisco device is RAM. And RAM stands for Random Access Memory. What is this random access memory? This is the main memory of the Cisco router. This is what takes the Cisco IOS from the flash memory and load it into the random access memory. And there is another part called NVRAM. NVRAM stands for non-volatile random access memory. Now, what is the difference between this RAM and NVRAM? The RAM stands for random access memory, which is volatile. Why it is called volatile? Because when it loses the electric power, then it loses all the configuration inside it. All the data will be erased. But on the other hand, the NVRAM stands for non-volatile random access memory. It means even it loses the electric power, it doesn't lose any configuration from it. It doesn't lose any data. The data will be there and it is accessible when the electric power is restored. So it is not getting deleted when the electricity is down. And because of this characteristic of NVRAM, it is using to store the configuration file of the Cisco devices. Because when you save the configuration file in NVRAM, even the power is down, the configuration file is not getting deleted. It is accessible when the power is restored. But on the other hand, just imagine if the configuration file is inside the random access memory, then what will happen? When it loses the electric power, all the configuration will be deleted. And next time when the device is power on, there is no configuration. Again you need to configure everything from the beginning, and this process repeat when the electric power loss again. So that's why the configuration file is stored in NVRAM. So it is stable there, it is available when the electric power is available. Here the configuration file that's stored in NVRAM is called startup configuration file. This is the configuration file the Cisco IOS required when it's load the operating system. Because when the operating system load, the Cisco IOS need to understand what is the configuration done for this device. What are the interfaces it is configured. What are the interfaces is up. What are the interfaces are down. And what is the host name, etc. It take all the information from the startup configuration. And once the Cisco operating system load from the startup configuration, then this startup configuration from the NVRAM, it will move to the random access memory, and that is called the running configuration. From there, in that point, the startup configuration and running configuration will be the same, because at this point, the running configuration is the exact replica of the startup configuration. Now, when you do any changes in the current configuration, then where these changes are applied? Is it in the startup configuration or in the running configuration? The answer is in the running configuration it is getting changed, because whatever the changes we are making, it is making from the running configuration. Now after you make some changes in the running configuration, what happened when you restart the device? All of these changes will be there when you reboot the device? No, because the running configuration is running from the random access memory, which is volatile. When you reboot the system or when you shut down the power, all the configuration made in that running configuration will not be saved. And when the router boot next time, it again looking for the startup configuration and take the configuration file from there as it is. So whatever the changes you have done before, it is not going to be available in the startup configuration. So what you need to do when you are making some changes in the running configuration? So after you make some changes in the running configuration, then you need to save that configuration into startup configuration. So when you save the current running configuration into startup configuration, then next time when the router boot, it will be getting all the configuration from the previous running configuration, because we save that running configuration as a startup configuration in the NVRAM. So in a Cisco device, these are the two types of configuration file. One is the startup configuration, which is available in NVRAM, which is the one loading to the Cisco IOS when the device boot. And the running configuration will be the current running configuration in that Cisco devices. Initially, running configuration will be taken from the startup configuration. For any changes happening in the running configuration, it's need to save into the startup configuration, so that when the device boot next time, all the modified configuration will be there. Now let me take you to a Cisco router console and show you all the concept that we have discussed in this video. So first of all, this is the console of the Cisco router 2911 series. Now let me reboot this router and show you what is happening when a router start. So to reboot, I am going to the privilege mode using the command enable, then using the command reload. So if you want to restart a router using the command line interface, then you can use this reload command. So I'm using here the reload command, then press enter. So it is asking, do you want to proceed with the reload? So I need to confirm. To confirm this thing, I can press the enter button. Now can you see here a series of pound keys going on? What does it mean? Let me pause my video here to show you this. This series of pound keys indicate decompressing of the Cisco IOS from the flash to random access memory. As I said before, the Cisco IOS is stored in the flash in a compressed format. And when the Cisco router start, that compressed image need to decompress and load into the random access memory of the Cisco router. And this is the process that indicate the decompressing process. Now let me resume my video, and now you can see the decompressing process has been completed, and now my router is displaying one question. And what is that? The question is, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? And there is two options, yes and no. Now why this router is asking this question when it complete the boot process? Why it is not directly going to its configuration file and load the configuration? Here the router is asking this question because there is no configuration file available in the NVRAM. This router is new router. It is a fresh. No configuration has been done in this router. So since there is no configuration done in this router, that means there is no configuration saved in the NVRAM. That's why this router is asking, do you want to do the initial configuration? Now we have two options. Either we can choose yes or no. If you choose yes, then router will ask you to configure this device in a systematic process. If you select the option no, then router will take you directly to the user mode, and from there you can configure the router manually as per your wish. Now let me select the option no here. See, as soon as I select the option no, then it is asking me to press return to get started. So let me press my enter key. Now I am in the user mode of the Cisco IOS. And here you can see the host name of this router is the default name, which is router. Now let me show you some important things. I was telling you guys, like, the Cisco IOS is located in the flash of the Cisco router. So how to see the Cisco IOS in the flash memory? How can you locate the Cisco IOS? For that, first of all, you need to go to the privilege mode by using the command enable. Now I am at the privilege mode. Here you can see the pound symbol, that means I am at the privilege mode. And from here, you just type command show. The show command is using to show some information. Just type show, then press the question mark. If you go here, you can see lot of options are here to show. And from here, I am going to select this option, flash. I want to see what is inside the flash. So I can go to the option flash. So let me go to my command here and type here flash, then again question mark, and this is the end of the command. Here you can see the CR. This means you need to press enter button and there is no further sub command available. So let me press the enter here. See, as soon as I press the enter, you can see now this console is displaying the flash directory, system flash directory. And here you can see the file number, you can see the length, that means the size of the file, and the name, status of the file. So here there are three files, 1, 2 and 3, and this first file is some XML file, and the second file is also another XML file. And if you see the third file, can you see this thing? It is mentioned C2900 universal K9 MZ, then finally you can see .bin here. So this is the Cisco IOS file that is located in the flash directory. So when the router start, this IOS file is the one decompress and load into the memory of the router. So this is the location of the Cisco IOS file in this router. Now when we start the router, it was not going through any configuration file. It was asking to do the initial setup. So the reason I told you for that, this router is a fresh router. There is no configuration has been done. There is no configuration file available in the NVRAM. So how to verify that? How do I know there is no configuration file available in the NVRAM? For that, we can go to NVRAM and see what is the content of NVRAM. Same like what we did for the flash, we can go to the NVRAM directory and see what is inside. So to go to NVRAM, I can use the command dir, which stands for the directory. This is used to display the directory. Then press the question mark here and see here we have multiple option, and here you can see the NVRAM here. And here you can see the flash also. So this is the flash directory that we had displayed before, and now we are going to display the NVRAM, and let's see what is inside the NVRAM. So NVRAM, then go to question mark, and this is the end of the command because here you can see the CR. Just let me press enter. Now see, no files in the directory. As I told you, there is no configuration file existing in the NVRAM. That's why there is no file in the directory. That's why the router was asking to do the initial setup when it boot. So this is how we identify the flash directory and NVRAM directory. Now, as I said, there is two kind of configuration file. One is the startup config file and another one is running configuration file. The startup configuration files contain the configuration that load into the Cisco IOS when the device start. Now as you can see here, there is no startup configuration in this router. So what is the command to display the startup configuration? To display the startup configuration, we can use the command show startup config. This is the command we use to display the startup configuration, and when you press enter, there is nothing because we didn't configure anything. That's why it is showing the startup config is not present. To set up the startup config, first we need to configure something in this router, then only we can save it as a startup config. Now what is the command we use to display the running configuration? To display the running configuration, we can use the command show running configuration, and when you press enter, see, this is the running configuration. This is the default configuration exists in this router when it's boot because it doesn't find any startup configuration, sir. So if you go to the running configuration, you can see the version of the iOS, then the host name is router, and this is the default host name. There is no change. Then if you go here, you can see this is the model number of the Cisco router 2911. And the spanning tree mode is PVST. Then you can see here the interface detail, gigabit Ethernet 0, gigabit Ethernet 0/1. Here you can see no IP address is configured. You can see the port is shut down. So these are the default settings of the Cisco router when it boot. Okay. So this is the running configuration. Now I'm going to configure something, and then I'm going to save that configuration as a startup configuration. Then let's see what is happening in this router. So first of all, I am going to configure the host name for this router. Currently it is the default name router. Now I want to change into something else. So for that, let me go to the configuration mode by using the command configure terminal. Then use the command host name. The router host name I am going to change Irash router. So this is the router name I am going to put here. Then when I press enter, here you can see the router name has been changed from the router to Irash router. Now this configuration is completed. Now let me exit from the configuration mode. Now I am going to save the current configuration as a startup configuration. So how do I save the configuration? For that, there is two methods. One is the command that we can use, copy, then running config, then startup config. And what does this mean? This is to tell the Cisco IOS to copy the current running configuration into the startup configuration. Basically, it is copy the source configuration, source is running configuration, to the destination configuration file, that is the startup configuration. Now when I press enter, it is asking destination file name. What destination file name you want to put? By default, I am using the file name as startup config. I can put a different file name, but it is not preferred because when the router boot, it will look to the file name called startup config. So if I save this file in any other name, then it may not load into the Cisco IOS. So let it be the default startup config, press enter. Now you can see here the building configuration and it is okay. The configuration has been done. Now I have copied all the running configuration into the startup configuration of this router. So that means there is a startup configuration saved somewhere. And where it is saved? In the NVRAM. So let me go to the NVRAM and verify that there is a startup configuration. So let me go to the NVRAM directory and press enter. See here. Before the NVRAM directory was empty, but now you can see there is a file which is called startup configuration, and this is the total size of that file. This is the size available free in the NVRAM. Now we know there is a startup configuration. Now can we display that startup configuration? Yes, of course. We can use the command show startup configuration, then press enter. What happened when we type the show startup configuration before? It was saying there is no configuration file available. Now when we use the command show startup config, we can see all the configuration that we saved in that startup config file. If you go here, you can see this is the Irash router. All the information is available here. Now basically we can say at this point both the startup config and the running config are the same, because we just save the running config as it is to the startup config. Now what will happen if I make any changes in the current running configuration? Will it reflect in the startup configuration? Let's find out. Now the current router hostname is Irash router. I am going to change this hostname into something else. For that, let me go to the privilege mode and configuration terminal to enter to the config mode. Now I am going to change the hostname, and which hostname we will put. The hostname I am going to put is Cisco router. Okay, then press enter. Here you can see the Irash router hostname has been changed to Cisco router. Now let me exit from here. Now what is the current configuration of this Cisco router? What is the current host name? The current host name is Cisco router. And from where this host name received? It is from the current running configuration. So let me go to the running configuration and verify this change is there. See, now when I go to the running configuration, you can see the current host name is Cisco router because we modify the running configuration. Now let's go to the startup configuration and see what is our host name. And here in startup configuration, the router name is still Irash router. You know why? Because we made the changes in the running configuration only. After we make the changes in the running configuration, we didn't save that to the startup configuration. So that's why in startup configuration it is showing Irash router, and in running configuration it is showing Cisco router. Now in this condition, what will happen if I reboot the router? After the reboot, which configuration it will take? So after the reboot, the router will take the configuration from the startup configuration, from the startup config file, and where its host name will be Irash router. So let me show that to you. So let me go here, then reload the router. Let me reboot the router, use the reload command, then press enter. See, as soon as I press enter, now system configuration has been modified. Do you want to save? And there is two options, yes or no. So the Cisco IO is saying to us there is a configuration changes in this running configuration. Now you are about to reboot the device. You will lose all the configuration. So before the reboot process, do you want to save this file or not? So if you say here yes, what will happen? All the running configuration will save into the startup config. If you choose no, what will happen? All the modification will be ignored and router will boot from the previous startup config. So let me take here the option no, then yes. Now the Cisco router is booting up and we will see what will be the result. Now the router is configured and it is asking press enter to get started. And when I press enter, see, it has taken the configuration from the startup configure file where the host name is still Irash router. The modification we made in the running configuration as the host name Cisco router, we didn't save that configuration, so that's why it is ignored. And next time when the router boot, it took the configuration from the startup config file. Now let me go to enable and configuration mode. Now I am going to change the host name into Cisco router. Okay, now I made the configuration changes in the running configuration. Now I am going to save this running configuration into startup configuration. And what is the command we can use to save the configuration? It is copy running config startup config. There is one more command we can use to save the configuration. And what is that? It is write memory. This is the command. This command is telling to iOS to write the changes into the memory. And when you press enter, it is saving the configuration from the running configuration to startup configuration. And here you don't want to write the complete sentence like write memory. We can use the shortcut. For example, just write is fine. If you just type write, then press enter, it is doing the same process. And even you don't want to type the complete sentence write. Instead, you can just type WR. It is fine. So the Cisco iOS can recognize this is the write command. Press enter. Now it is saving the configuration. Now if you go to the directory NVRAM, here you can see our configuration. This is our startup configuration, and next time when the router boot, it will load the configuration from this startup config file. Now let me reboot the router again. For that, using command reload, confirm, and now the iOS is decompressing. And when you press enter here, see, now the modified host name, it came here because we saved that configuration from running configuration to startup configuration. Now let me go to the enable option and go to the command copy. Now type the question mark. Now when you use the command copy, it is not only to copy from the running configuration to startup configuration. It shows multiple options. Like you can copy a file from the flash, you can copy a file from the FTP, you can copy the running configuration, and you can copy file from SCP, you can copy the startup configuration, and TFTP options are available. Now the running configuration you want to save somewhere else other than the startup configuration, check if there is an option. So I am going to copy the running configuration, then press question mark. See, the running configuration you can save into startup configuration that we did already. Even the running configuration you can save into flash, you can save to FTP, you can save to SCP, you can save to TFTP even. So this is the way of saving the configuration file. You can save the running configuration into startup configuration, and you can copy the startup configuration into running configuration as well. In both way it works. So that's it about the configuration file. So far in this chapter, we have discussed about the booting process in Cisco router or switch. We have discussed about the flash, random access memory, and non-volatile random access memory. We have discussed about the flash, RAM, and NVRAM. Then we have discussed about the startup configuration. Then we have discussed about the running configuration. Then I explained to you how to show the startup and running configuration of your Cisco device. And finally, I show you how to save the configuration of Cisco devices. Thank you very much for watching, and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Enhance your skill using Irash Academy.